Before we start this video, a large thank you to J.O., Jason, Ben, Agonies, iPlay, Ryan, and Doiza for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And an immense thank you to Halo Burner for their continued support to the channel this month on Patreon. It is sincerely and greatly appreciated, my friend, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, and today we're going to continue our blocking video. So what I'm going to do is just go to my animations here. If you're using anything biased, they come with offhand block animations. I'm going to set up two weapons so we can make sure that the change is happening. So I'm going to use the shield, but we're going to start with the straight sword because that's our base animations. Kind of everything defaults back to these if we don't have a weapon equipped for now. So I'm going to copy, also if you wanted to, you could make an additional layer for blocking locomotion and just put it above the base layer. If you don't want to put all your locomotion on one layer, just make sure the weight's set to 1. If you don't like having a lot of transition arrows and stuff in the animator, but I don't care too much, so I'm just going to put it all here on the base layer and use all the transitions that I need. So I'm going to copy locomotion, one-handed and two-handed. I'm just going to rename it to blocking. And again, we're not using our two-handed yet, but just so the blend tree is there in the future when we do add two-handing, which isn't that far away. I'm going to do the same thing here and paste this here as well. Make sure you have the idle. And then we're going to make some transitions. But first, we also need to set up a new parameter in the animator to know if we are blocking or not. So we can actually just move these two-handed animations out of the way for now as well because they're kind of just crowding up the space here. We don't really need to focus on those. So we can get those out of the way too in a second. I'm just going to make sure all my names are correct. So blocking locomotion two-handed, blocking locomotion one-handed, blocking idle one-handed, and then blocking idle two-hand weapon. All right, so that will be everything. Now, I am just going to grab all these, like I just said, move them out of the way there. And I am going to just bring these down here because right now, these are the only 4 sets of animations we need to worry about. So let's add a new parameter. Whoops, not a new layer, a new parameter. And the parameter is going to be a bool, and it's just going to be called isBlocking. Okay, so let's set up some transitions. So locomotion to blocking locomotion, it's going to be isBlocking is true. And you don't want any exit time on these at all. And then likewise, back from blocking locomotion to regular locomotion, isBlocking is false. And again, onCheck has exit time. OnCheck has exit time for all of these. Now from blocking locomotion to blocking idle, we're just going to check for isMoving. And if it's true, we're going to go to the locomotion. If it's false, we're going to go to the idle, just the same as you would set up your regular locomotion right down below. And then we're going to go from idle to blocking idle if blocking again is true. And if it's not true, then we're going to go to regular idle. So you could check for both isMoving and isBlocking on some of these, but I find it doesn't seem to be necessary. But if you find you want to do that, go for it. Now let's go to our blend tree. I'm not going to make you sit through all of this, but you want to find the blocking animation. So for example, if I type in, I can't remember if it's offhand or one hand, it's probably offhand. So we'll start with the guard straight sword. So guard offhand, yeah, here we go. So if you type in guard off and walk, this assumes you're using any of the animations that we have here. You can find all these. Just replace the like forward with the offhand guard forward, and then the backward with the offhand guard backward, and so on and so forth. Just basically setting up all the locomotion so your locomotion changes when you're blocking. Your blend tree changes when you're blocking because the way you walk with the shield while you're blocking is going to be different than if you're just walking with the shield normally. So I'm just going to go ahead here and put in straight sword animations for the default animations. This is before the controller is overridden because remember, each weapon now has their own animator controller, but we use the straight sword as a default for now. And with idle, just use the straight sword, guard offhand idle. And in the future, you can use two-hand for the two-handed, but this is all offhand right now because you can only block using your offhand or if you're two-handing the weapon. Now, I made another weapon here called the medium shield. I've just set it up. I'm going to create a new animator for it called the medium shield. So we've set up plenty of weapons here now in the past, so you guys are comfortable with that. Just create a weapon if you're going to use a shield, and if not, just use something you already have. Going to drop in the weapon animator, the medium shield. And then I'm going to just quickly replace all these animations, so all the attacks and all the guard animations I put in are replaced with shield offhand, sorry. So as you can see here, these are all replaced. Looks good. Now if I were to go over to our weapon action scripts, let's create a new script to handle this new offhanded action. I'm going to call it offhand melee action. And why am I calling this and not block action? Well, we'll get to that in just a second. I'll erase the start and update functionality and drop in my namespace as is per tradition. And then I'm going to answer that question that some of you probably have. So question, why call it offhand melee action, not block action? And the answer is quite simple. In the future, if the character is wielding a main hand and offhand weapon of the same class, the offhand weapon action will not be a block. Instead, it will become a dual attack called power stancing. So this isn't just for blocking. Let's make this derived from the weapon item action also. This is going to hold our future logic for doing power stance attacks. And since only melee weapons can do that, that's why I call it the offhand melee weapon action. So let's create an asset menu, and I'm just going to actually copy one from light attack to make sure we're similar in our naming conventions here. So character actions, weapon actions, offhand melee action. Cool, looks good. So what are we going to do? Well, let's override the default logic, because that really does nothing. And then we're going to start writing in some code here and see what we want to do. So what do we want to do before we block? Well, we don't want to allow a block. Well, we also have to check for power stance first, which we can't do. So we're just going to make a comment here. Check for power stance, dual action. We'll do that in the future when we get power stancing added in. And then we're going to check for if we can block. Okay, well, if we need to check if we can block, let's make a variable for that, because sometimes you want to be able to block during certain animations. So public bool can block is equal to true. An example of that is if you're performing an attack with a spear, you can actually still block if you're doing a light attack with spear weapons, if it's a small or medium spear. And there's a few other small niche examples too. So if we cannot block, return. That's the first rule. Next, we're going to say if the player performing an action is attacking, which you don't have set up yet, we also want to disable the block in most cases. Again, there is a special circumstance here where you can do it with a light or medium spear, but that will have its own action that no other weapon will have. So we're going to say disable blocking, and again, I'll add this as a comment so we don't forget. When using a short medium spear, it's going to have its own action, so that doesn't apply to this rule here. So let's go make the network variable for the is attacking. So character network manager, and we have is moving, we have is blocking. It's right below is blocking under these flags here. I guess is moving is technically a flag. We could move that if we wanted to. So we could say is attacking. There we go. Now we need to set this up so it's actually becoming active, and we need to also reset it. So before we do that, though, we're just going to say if player performing action is owner, then we're going to set the is blocking status to false. Player network manager is blocking is equal to false. All right, cool. Is blocking value is equal to false. Save that. I'm going to make a comment here. Check for attack status. Now we have this attack pool. We're never using it, so let's use that and reset it. So you can see here, every attack comes back to this empty animator state on the action override. This is not an accident. So if we open up a reset action flag, as I'm sure all of you know, we're setting a bunch of flags here. We're going to check if we are the owner. Let's also reset the attacking flag. So character.characterNetworkManager is attacking.value is equal to false. All right, now we actually haven't set that flag anywhere. So let's go to our light and heavy attack actions. And after we pass all the checks and an attack is guaranteed, let's check for owner, and then let's just simply turn that attacking flag to true. So if player performing action dot is owner, player performing action dot player network manager dot is attacking dot value is true. Again, after you've passed every single check, turn this to true. Do the same thing for the heavy attack action, because an attack is guaranteed after all this, and we're good to go. Save that, and now we have a way to know when we are performing an attack. All right, so now we're going to return after we reset blocking if we have been attacking, and we're disabling it. Lastly, we're going to check if we're already blocking, and if that is the case, we're going to return as well and do nothing. And if we're not attacking and we're not already blocking, then what we're going to do is just simply enable isBlocking.value. So player.isPerforming action, if they are is owner, then we're going to say player.performing action dot player network manager is blocking.value is equal to true. I don't think you can block an ELDEN while you're sneaking, so this is a good place to reset sneaking to, but I can't recall, to be honest, because I don't think I've ever tried to block while I've been sneaking. But I'll look into that later, and we can put a comment there if that's the case. All right, let's save that. Go over now into the actions, or sorry, the weapon actions under the data folder, and let's create this new action. I don't think I've been adding these previous actions to our World Action Manager, which we should. So I'm going to do that as well. Let's go to the World Action Manager, and let's just, if you still haven't updated Unity like me on this project, you're going to get an error when I click that. Yep, there it is. Click off and click it back on the prefab, make that go away, and let's drop in all of our actions. So we got our test action, our heavy action, light action, and our offhand action. Now we could get rid of the test action if we wanted to. We don't really need that. It's never used anymore, but I'll keep it there just for whatever. Let's go to the weapon item script next, and what we're going to do on this script is come right down here and add a one-handed left bumper action right under wherever, honestly. So one-handed left bumper action. There we go. Going to call this one-handed left bumper action. Save that. Very good. Now let's find where we reference. I guess we know we reference, so we can just jump over to that after. First, in the weapon of your choice, I'm going to select all of mine, highlight them all by shift-clicking, dropping your new offhand melee action, because we have no non-melee weapons right now, so no worries about highlighting them all. Now, over here into the player input manager, let's make a new bumper input, call it left bumper input. This is a bool, by the way, defaultly initialized at false. So we find where this right bumper input is engaged, we can copy the logic and do the same thing. So player controls.player actions left bumper dot performed plus equals I equals greater than left bumper input is equal to true. Now there is no left bumper input yet in the player controls, but we will get to that. Next, go down to handle RB input, the function. Let's copy that and paste it right below. Change RB to LB. Do that several times. Make sure you do it slowly so you don't actually miss one because I've done that before. So handle left bumper and then LB input, and then LB input is equal to false. And then we're setting the character action. This is true, meaning right-handed. This should be false. In the future, this will change if we are using our left-handed weapon and it's two-handed, but I'm not going to overcomplicate things right now, confuse people when we don't need to, so let's just keep that at false. That's all we need to worry about for now. All right, so next we're going to play a weapon-based action. So we're going to use our left-handed weapon and the one-handed left bumper action, because that's for the left hand. And then we're going to use the player inventory current left-hand weapon. That's it for now. This will get a little bit more complex when we add two-handing, but we'll worry about that when we get there. All right, let's save that now. Scroll back up to the handle all inputs function, and let's actually call this so we're able to use this logic. So handle left bumper input, save that, good to go. You're going to give me an error, like I said, because the input does not exist. So let's go to player controls, player actions. Let's duplicate our right bumper input here. And we're going to simply change that name from RB to LB. And then we go down to the button here, and right shoulder becomes left shoulder. And that's it. And we can save that, and that error should then leave us alone forever, hopefully. Close, save, compile, and wait for that. Yes, it is gone. Cool. All right, what's next? I'm going to jump back into Visual Studio here, and I'm going to go back over to Player Input Manager, and we can also do something cool here. So we can use left bumper, not performed, but dot canceled. And whenever we use this, it's going to fire this whenever we stop pressing the button. So what we can do then is say player.playerNetworkManager.isBlocking.value is equal to false. Don't need to check for owner here because this script is only running on you, the local player, so don't need to worry about that. All right, cool. Next, let's go to the Character Network Manager. We want to make a public void here for onIsBlockingChanged. Now, there is one universal thing I think that we use for everything, creature, character, or player, and that's updating the animator status. Maybe you might not have different animations, or you may have different animations with the player if you're blocking, say if you're some kind of monster, but regardless, if we are blocking, we can change the character's animator is blocking status to the new status of the block. So character.animator set bool, we call it is blocking, and we just simply pass the is blocking dot value. Whoops, forgot my comma. There we go. And we don't need to check if is blocking to do this because this happens every time it changes regardless. If it's false, it turns it to false. If it's true, it turns it to true. All right, now we need to call that on the on-network spawn. Let's go do that. So I'm going to go to Player Network Manager, Player Manager. And then we're going to go down to on-network spawn. And as I'm looking back at this right now, actually, future Seb here, I believe I forgot to unsubscribe on-network despawn, so please don't forget to do that. Player Network Manager.isBlocking.onValue changed plus equals Player Network Manager on is blocking changed. And we also have to call this as well when we're joining. Let's say someone's holding the blocking button. You're not going to call that because it hasn't changed. They're already blocking when you've joined. So likewise, we need to sync that if it's already happening while you've joined. We do that by going to load other player characters when joining server, and we just call that function to do the check. So we'll say Player Network Manager.on is blocking changed false, and we pass the current status of is blocking.value over here. All right, cool. That looks good. Go to definition, all is well. Get to change is locked on to is blocking. Actually, no, I'm not, because then it's going to say this blocking, and I don't like that. So I'm going to change this to new status. We're just going to keep using new status, old status. That's the best way to do it. Get rid of this. There we go, and old status. All right, cool. Now you could do a check right here too and set some stuff up for your weapon as well, but we'll get to that in a bit. Let's save this. Go back to the animator here. Make sure your untick has exit time on every one of these transitions. And you're not like me who forgot to do it. Okay, that looks good. Yes, two more to, no, I already did those. Sorry, we're good. Forgot this one. Okay. All right, now if we go into the scene here, I'm going to take out my shield, and you can see it looks absolutely fine in the right hand, which is as expected, but in the left hand, it's not working out so good. So this is obviously a unique problem because the shields are held a little bit differently than melee weapons than standard swords and spears, which are just a stick. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to make different instantiation locations on your offhand only, because your right hand is where you're going to set everything up, and your offhand is where you're going to tweak the values based on the right hand settings. So just to keep the conventions the same too, I'm going to make the right hand slot a child of the right hand object down here. So I'm going to get rid of the script on the right hand and just give it its own game object down here for no reason really, other than I just like having it set up the same way as the left hand. So I'm going to paste that right there like so. And reset the transform so it's a perfect child of that. Don't assign it any weird values or anything, or else you'll mess up what you've already done, even if you nudge it to the left or right a little bit. Okay, I'm going to paste the component values here. Whoops, again, don't forget to reset that. Very important. This transform should be zeroed out. Not like over here where it's just a couple spots off. It looks like it's the same, but trust me, it's not. It's just reset that. All right, so what we do now, so let's go to the left hand and let's duplicate this weapon slot instantiation thing we got going on here. And let's just let's rename this to left hand weapon slot, and let's make another one for left hand shield slot. And I say weapon as in your general weapon, like your bow or sword. So anything specific will get its own little slot here if we need to make it in the future, but I don't think we'll need to make any more. So go to your weapon model slot enum and make or rename rather left hand weapon slot, or left hand slot, sorry, to left hand weapon slot. And then rename or add another one and call this left hand shield slot. We don't need to mess with the right hand because we're basing everything off of the original right hand transform. So make another weapon instantiation slot variable in your player equipment manager and call this a left hand shield slot. Likewise, I'm going to rename my first one to left hand weapon slot just to keep my naming conventions the same. Now, all we do is come down here on initialize the weapon slots, and we can say else if left hand shield slot, we say left hand shield slot is equal to weapon slot. So it'll automatically fetch those for us. We don't need to change anything here. We just need to add a search for the new slot we've made. Okay, so if we go over now to the weapon item, let's also assign this a weapon model ID or a type. We need to know if it's a shield or a regular weapon. And in the future, if you want to add like tomes or some other cool stuff you want to hold, you can give them their own little types too. But this is just for the instantiation of the weapon model. So I'm going to make an enum called weapon model type. And right now there's just your basic weapon. So again, I'm going to use weapon for all general purpose, or shield. And then we come back over here and we go over to the weapon item, make it public, so we need to access it from the player equipment manager. Weapon model type, and I'm just going to call this weapon model type. So this is very simple, and it's not going to modify anything we already have set up, thankfully. So we go down here now to load left weapon, and all we need to do is, instead of just checking or removing the model on one slot, we can check if that's null too. So if left-hand weapon slot model is not equal null, then we can unload the weapon. And then we can do the same thing with the shield slot. That's it. So we remove any possibility where a weapon could be on our offhand. And now the thing we do here is we keep the logic exactly the same, but we're going to use a switch statement. So we're going to instantiate the model regardless, but we'll get to that next. We just do switch, and then we're going to do a switch statement on the player.player inventory manager .current left-hand weapon .weapon model type. All right, cool. So now we have weapon or we have shield. So what we can do is we're going to instantiate it regardless. We can put that before the switch happens. Because again, doesn't matter what type it is, we're going to instantiate the weapon model. So let's just bring that right above here, right above the switch statement. Now the only thing that changes is where the model goes. So this load weapon model thing here, if it's a weapon, we're just going to put it right here, general purpose weapon. If it's a shield, we can say left-hand shield slot .load weapon, and that's it. Just like that. All right, let's save that, and that should be good. Now, let's make sure we tag this left-hand shield slot. So go to your slots here, make sure the weapon slot is the weapon slot, the shield is the shield slot. Now, if you look at my right hand here, like I said, you can see it's looking pretty great, but my offhand, it looks pretty terrible. So it's also instantiated on the wrong slot. I forgot to go to the shield and actually set the model type. So let's go do that. Weapon to shield on your shield if you're using one. That's also why I wanted to cover shields today, because this is a bit that's a little bit different. So now we can go here and just, get this to a position where it looks like it mirrors this other one. And if you wanted to do some math wizardry, you could get it to mirror it exactly, I'm sure. But I'm just going to set it up so it looks real good. And I can tweak that however I like it. So I won't spend too much time. I'll fast forward here. This is the values I went with. So you can see here, it's pretty much mirrored here. I think I could kind of tilt it a tiny bit more if I wanted to. And maybe you don't want it to look exactly the same. I don't know. Maybe you wanted to have a little bit of flair so it looks slightly different in your offhand. That's cool too. So if you want my values, then this is what I'm going to go with right here. So when you have those values, what you want to do while you're still live in the game is right-click, copy component, and you can stop the game here. Go back into your prefab, and you can paste those component values on that instantiation slot, just like before. So left-hand shield slot, paste component values, there you go. Let's say you can edit it live in the game and save it. Now if we go back into the game here, you can see my offhand shield looks real nice. That's cool. But if I block, it's not updating my controller, so it's a straight sword. So that's a problem. So I'm using the straight sword blocking animations and not the shield. Let's go to our Assets Scripts Animator folder. Well, let's not go there. Actually, let's add the script here first so it auto-fills the things we need. Go to your blocking state on the animator and add the script, toggle blocking controller. I'm going to drop in my namespace as is per tradition. There's no start or update functionality here to erase, unfortunately, so we can't do that. So we're going to use onState enter, and I'm going to make a character manager variable. We're going to access our character's inventory here. Well, we're only going to use this sort of player, I guess. Now I'm thinking about it. This should be a player manager variable, but we'll get to that in a sec. So onState enter if character is equal to null. Character is equal to animator.getComponent character manager. If character is still null, then return. Shouldn't be null. Should never be null, but if it is, return. And then we're going to say to do in future. We're going to check for two-hand status. So that's not there for now, so we're not going to worry about that. The two-handed stuff does make things a bit more complex, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We're going to say if character.characterNetworkManager is blocking.value, then we're going to do some logic. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to access our inventory manager, and we're going to update our controller using that weapons animator. So we're going to say character.characterAnimatorManager update animator controller. And here is the part where I'm going to change this character manager variable to a player manager variable so we can access our player manager's inventory. So I'm just going to rename this to from character to player. And then we're going to say if the player is blocking, check out the player's inventory, access the offhand weapon because you can only block with your offhand. And then we're going to use that weapon's animator by referencing its weapon animator. Cool. So what if we're not blocking? Well, then we're going to go back to the main hand's weapon animator. So we copy this, do the same thing, except we reference our current right hand weapon and its animator. And again, this will change when we're two-handing, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So copy all of this also now and put it on state exit. So let's just uncomment this out so it's actually active. Do the same thing, you're good to go. Now we need to put this on both of the blocking animation states, so the idle and the locomotion. And yeah, you're good to go. That should change our animations. I'll save that and we can pop into the game and see. And sure enough, there you go. I block, I raise the shield, and you can see my controller changes to medium shield. When I lower it, it changes back to straight sword. Cool. Working as intended. Very nice. All right, what's next? Well, we need to add some actual values to your weapon that you're blocking with. Otherwise, you're just blocking and your values are still 0, so you're doing a block, but you're not really negating any damage. So on the weapon item scripts, I'm going to make a header for weapon blocking absorption. And then I'm going to make one for all of our damage types, which I believe are physical, magic, fire, lightning, and holy. So in no particular order, but I am actually going to put them in a particular order so it is in the same order as the damage values above, or else it's going to drive me nuts. So we're going to say public float, physical base damage absorption is 50, fire base damage absorption is 50, and these are just all values that you're going to change depending on the weapon for sure, by the way. I'm just going to put it 50 because that's exactly in the middle between 0 and 100%. So we're going to say holy, base damage, lightning, fire, physical, and we're forgetting one. It's magic. So I think the order is physical, magic, fire, holy, and lightning. That's the same order. I had them above for damage, I'm pretty sure. Oh, and we need to add stability as well. Stability, for those of you who don't know, affects how much stamina you lose when you're guarding with your shield. So if your stability is higher, you'll lose way less stamina. Sorry, there we go. All right, looks good. I'm going to save that now. Reduces stamina lost from blocking. We'll put a comma there so it's very clear. All right, so back over on the Character Network Manager, you could set up your blocking values right here, but most AI are probably going to have their blocking values predetermined. So this is really only needed for the player who's constantly changing his weapons. So we're gonna make this into a virtual void and override that on the player. So public virtual void on blocking changed, on his blocking changed. And then we're going to go to the player network manager and we're going to override that and we're going to set these values to whatever weapon they're currently using. And this will be the same too if you're using some kind of AI that is meant to mimic the player, like those mock invaders, that whole deal. But for most AI, like all your creatures, it's just going to be a preset thing. So we're going to say if we are the owner, you don't need to check if you're the owner, but we don't really need to assign blocking values if you're not, because all that calculated stuff is handled on the owner's end. So that's why I'm just checking. Yeah, but again, you don't need to check in this case. Just wanted to explain why I'm doing that right here. So player.player stats manager.blocking physical absorption is equal to player.player combat manager, current weapon being used, physical base damage absorption. I'm going to copy and paste that for all the damage types and save that. And then over here on my medium shield, I'm going to edit these types here. I'm going to give it 66 stability. I think that's the default for Dark Souls 3's Night Shield. Can't remember though. 100% physical or 99 might be the default. Can't recall that either. I think it's 100. We'll give it like 75 magic, 85 fire, 75 holy, and we'll give it 75 lightning. Yeah, it looks good. All right, cool. Let's save that. Now, if I go into the game and I block, it should change my values from 0. See, 0. These should all change when I hit the block. Here we go. And yes, they do. Cool. So that is working as intended. There you go, guys. Now, we still have a bit to do. We still have to factor in our blocking animations depending on the amount of power you're hit from. We're going to add some noises. We're going to add those offhand idle animations when you're switching to a blocking weapon. So one more video and we should have all the stuff in there for blocking, all the very, very important things. Come back and make some tweaks later when we add two-handed. But thank you very, very much for joining me again this weekend, everybody. And I want to extend my gratitude to all of my patrons. Sincerely, if it were not for you guys, I could not keep this stuff up on YouTube at the rate that I do. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. I hope you all have a very lovely weekend, and I will see you all next week on the next video.